So let's talk about some of the basics of the prelim exam, right? So the general purpose of the prelim exam is to help you advance to candidacy. And so we want to make sure that you have the foundational knowledge and skills to be productive and successful as a PhD candidate. And there's lots of information about the learning objectives and all of this in the graduate handbook and also in this handout.
Oh no, not that one. That one.
One of the handouts. And it's in the graduate handbook too, which is a website. There's a paper copy you can get if you would like that from the main office, or there's also a website where all of this is updated. And we at the Graduate Studies Committee spend a lot of time trying to make all this more clear for all of you students. So definitely refer to that if you have questions. Okay, so the basic requirements in order to take this exam, you've got to have your 18 credits of coursework done. You've got to have a GPA of 2.8 or greater on your plan of study, and you have to have passed your foundational course with a B or better. These are all things you know. We're just re-saying them so we're all on the same page. Okay. So the prelim process starts in the summer. And as of Monday, it's now the summer. So this is why we're bringing this up now, and it's time to start thinking about this. So this summer, you're going to write your second year annual report. And that's going to have your, oh, it's in those handouts. That's going to have your dissertation research summary, which includes all of these, right? So all of your sort of updates on your research and all the great things you've been doing in the lab. And then you're also going to be handing in your specific aims, or like in biochem, they call it the one pager, and I think that's kind of a good name for it. But basically what it is, it's like a one-page summary of your OP idea. It doesn't have to be totally fleshed out, but it's like, this is kind of what I'm thinking about. These are my project objectives, and you're going to hand that in with your annual report. And the reason you're going to hand that in with your annual report is because that's going to go to your committee and you're going to get feedback from your committee on your one pager. So if your idea totally sucks, that's when your committee is going to tell you. Okay. And if your committee tells you that the idea sucks, you need to listen to them. Okay. Don't be like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. Wait till they see the full report. It's going to be amazing. Do not do that. Okay. If your committee doesn't like it, then you may go to your committee. You may get help refining your topic. You may go to other people in the department. You can pretty much talk to anybody you want in the department about this except for your advisor. So, please, like, the feedback that you get from this is very important, and you want to heed that advice. Okay, so scheduling your preliminary exam is more the administrative side of things, right? So you're going to decide on your exam date at the beginning of the fall semester. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to poll all of your committee, and you're going to find a 2-hour block of time when they can all come together in a room to meet with you for your exam. Once you figure this out, you're going to send Dee Dee an email with the exam date and time and the names of your 3 committee members. Okay, if you do that, Dee Dee will take care of details for you, like figuring out the exam room and submitting the form to the graduate school, all that good stuff, right? The other thing is that you have to hand in your annual report. So the Graduate Studies Committee decided this year that if you do not hand in a second year annual report, you will not be allowed to schedule your OP. And I know that seems like a little bit harsh, but your committee needs to know going into this exam, like what you've accomplished so that your exam can be useful to you. So as you can see here, it's very important that the main office know that you're taking this exam. You should never take an exam without somebody in the main office knowing, okay? Because Dee Dee is the one that makes sure like it's all cool with the graduate school. And if you take this exam and the graduate school doesn't know it, they might not recognize it and you might have to do it all over again, which would be horrible, right? What's worse than taking an OP? Taking 2 OPs, right? So you want to make sure that with all of your OP things that you're communicating with the main office. And then so once you do all that, you're ready to start writing, right? So you have your written OP and then your dissertation research summary. Those are going to be the two parts of this exam. And you're going to email them to Dee 2 weeks before your exam date. Okay, they need to be at the main office 2 weeks before. Right.
Hopefully, we'll have a new Jordan soon.
That's right.
All of this will switch to her.
Yeah, we've been interviewing and we really like a candidate and we made her an offer.
She accepted.
She did?
Yeah.
She did. Her name's Mary Beth. She's super nice. Not to be confused with the other Mary, but yeah. So you have to hand this in 2 weeks before. What happens during these 2 weeks? I don't know. And you know what? It's not for you to know either. So you just do what it says. Okay. So it has to be in 2 weeks before. Okay. So let's talk about the proposal. Before you start, you should ask your PI about divisional expectations. You will also learn more about that later in this program. Okay. Things to include your problem, the intellectual merit of your proposal. Why is your proposal better than what's out there? Things you think, challenges you think you're going to run into, and what are you going to accomplish by addressing the problem? Basically, impact. What's the impact of your work? And it should outline a full research, or it doesn't have, or should outline a full research program, but should not include an extensive review of past research. So you want this document to be focused on your idea. And then the research summary is basically a chance for your committee to get to see your research, to give you feedback on it. So you're just going to do this research report. It's like a small supplement. It goes along with your second year annual report, anything additional that you've accomplished, like since you've turned in your second year report, and some future research directions and maybe improvements, if you have some ideas for that. Okay, so on the day of the exam, you want to arrive early and you want to make sure that all your AV stuff is working. You want to dress professionally and make sure that you leave about 20 minutes at the end for your required research assessment, right? That's what the RRA is. Yeah, that's what we call it. We like our acronyms here in the Palooza Formation Committee. Okay, and so the two exam components are going to be weighed equally, right? So the committee's going to discuss both your OP and then they're going to also discuss your research progress. Okay, so this is just a guideline. You don't have to like stick exactly to this, but about 20 slides where you're sharing your background, talking about your proposal, and then leading a discussion about your proposal, and then be prepared for committee questions. So they're going to interrupt you. This is a strategy we use to throw you off. We want to see how you think on your feet. Okay, we want to know, can you answer us and then get back on track? This is also very useful for when you become older and you become a parent. This also happens a lot. Lots of interruptions, throwing you off track. Like, where do eels come from? You know, while you're trying to do your taxes or something. Okay. Prepare questions about your design and topics that are foundational, so they can ask you testy type of questions. They can ask you more application-based questions. And we know that you're not going to know all the answers. We're going to try to ask you stuff maybe that you wouldn't know the answer to, but we're just curious how you're going to respond to it. And this is good practice for what happens when you get out into the science real world and you give conference talks and things like that, and people ask you totally random stuff. And you're like, I don't even know where you came up with that, but you're at a conference and you have to be professional. So we're going to have you practice this skill now, right? This is what happens at conferences. At least it does to me. Okay, so you're going to be providing the overview of your research progress, your success and your failures, and your future plans. And so about 5 minutes of intro, and then some time talking about your projects and accomplishments, and then maybe some future plans. I like to think of this as an ACS talk, right? So an ACS talk's usually 20 minutes. I usually do 5 minutes of intro, 15 minutes about my project, and I don't tell people about my future plans because I don't want them to steal it. But we're not going to steal from you, so you can tell us this. the exam, we're going to kick you out and we're going to talk about how you did. So be prepared to leave the room. So there's three options. You've either passed, you failed, or we're undecided. And so passing is easy, that's very straightforward. Failing is also pretty straightforward where we decide that you're not ready, but I have to say failing is not super common, right? I'd say like you either pass or there's an undecided where there's like issues with your proposal that like we can tell you didn't think about or something like that. We might ask you to write like another page or two or three pages to address the parts that we think that you didn't think about, right? So that's okay. And in that case, we'll tell you what exactly you need to do, when you need to hand it in by. You'll give it to us. We'll look at it. We'll decide if you have met the goal, and then we will decide based on that either pass or fail. Okay, so these are the three potential outcomes. Okay, now the other thing, so I want to talk about AI use for a minute. So this is actually something that we're talking about the Graduate Studies Committee right now. Like a few weeks ago, we had a meeting and we're going through and trying to develop an AI policy for the department. We're not done yet. Okay, so what I'm going to tell you is that we are not saying that you cannot use AI, okay? AI can be helpful when used appropriately. But the idea here is that this exam is supposed to be your ideas, okay? It's supposed to demonstrate independent analysis, synthesis, interpretation of ideas, all of that, right? We want you to go through the scholarly literature. We want you to come up with kind of a cool idea that, you know, you think will work. So if you want to use I recommend that you make sure that you quote it, you cite it, put in the inputs that you use, like to get your information, right? So because if you don't do this stuff and we can tell that you have used AI, then it's going to be cited as plagiarism and academic dishonesty. So we ourselves don't have a problem with you using AI. We just want you to use it responsibly and cite it appropriately where you use it. Does that make sense? Okay. So in summary, you may use AI if you do it appropriately. Okay. All right. So this is the intro part that's done. Do you have questions from the intro part? Oh, it's 2:29. Yes.
If and when there is a new Jordan, are we going to send the OP stuff to them instead?
Absolutely.
And if you're not sure, you just CC Dee. Okay?
No.
If you're ever not sure, CC Dee. That's right. Okay. Yes.
I don't know this for the guidelines, it mentions that the annual report is a foundation for the research summary. So does this mean that we have to add the updates about research without like having to paraphrase the whole report, that use it as whole?
So you got your research report. It's a stuff. Okay, so it's not entirely adding those three components.
Yeah. It's like if you have any
additional
that you want the committee to know about. Yeah. Yes.
pass fail undecided.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and with fail, fail doesn't mean like necessarily like you're just done.
Basically, you can take it again in 6 months
Maybe.
if your committee agrees.
Yeah.
So they can either recommend that you get a master's and leave, they could recommend that you just leave, or they can recommend that you take it again in 6 months.
The middle option, I don't know that I that.
Oh, well, I have. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you stories later. Okay. Yeah. So the failing isn't necessarily like you're done, but it's like you got to have a serious talk with your committee and your advisor. Yeah. Well, usually we tell people to schedule like a 2 hour block, and then you'll bring your slides and you'll present and we'll interrupt you. And that'll probably take like somewhere between an hour and a half, depending on how like energetic your committee's feeling that day. And then we will have you do the research report. And so we say about 20 minutes for that. We'll probably ask you questions about that too. And then by the time we kick you out, talk about you, bring you back in for the decision, the whole thing will be around 2 hours. Mhm. Well, this goes into the divisional part of the OP, but my piece of advice for all of you is that you want to make sure that you don't lose control of that room. If you lose control of your room, you're done. Okay? So you want to make sure that you're on top of things, you're leading the discussion. When we, the faculty, try and sidetrack you, you can be like, oh, that's beyond the scope of this. Let's go back to this thing I was talking about, right? So you're kind of in charge of leading that discussion and helping that discussion go where you want to go. Because if they lead the discussion and take it down a road you have no idea, then that's not going to be.
All right, speaking of moving on to the divisional part of things.
Oh, that's
Let's talk about the inorganic division.
okay.
So, grad student panel by 4 p.m. So if you guys have more questions, if a student will want to, can that.
Yeah.
Now this isn't.
Oh yeah. I'm so chill. That's what everyone says about me. All right. So if you're leaving, please be quiet so everybody else can hear. So I'm going to give you some general advice. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to give you some general advice, both for inorganic and then just for the exam as a whole. So, all of the people that left, you don't need to tell them what to say. They didn't hear. All right. So also Dr. Wilker is both inorganic and materials. He's doing the materials next. So if you have inorganic stuff you want to chime in with, John, let me know. Okay. Okay, so do's and don'ts for your OP. We'll go over the do's first. So choose a topic that interests you and excites you. So you can choose any topic that you want. And in the inorganic division, we say that it can't be directly related to your research. So it has to be different than what you're studying. But the idea here is that you choose something that you think is really cool and that you're interested in. So it's your idea, your project. So pick something that you're like, oh, I'm excited to read about that, or I really want to learn about this area or something like that. So do ask your research advisor and check the grad student handbook about divisional guidelines, appropriate length, research relevance, all of that, right? So in inorganic, we say not related to your research, and I usually tell people like 10 to 15 pages, but that's a very loose guideline. So come up with a few ideas and spend time researching them simultaneously. Do not put all of your eggs in one basket, because if you soon find out that somebody actually did that already, like, you're going to be in trouble. So you want to make sure that you're kind of dividing your time up with like maybe one major area, but then like some subsets of that, just in case like somebody comes out with something or you realize, oh crap, somebody already did this. All right. Please use figures to make your report interesting and effective. We like pictures, so definitely do that. This is a big one. Make sure you actually propose something. So John and I Dr. Wilker and I have both been in OPs where the people forgot to propose something. And I know you're thinking, how can that happen? But like, you get so involved in what you're doing and researching, and then you're so relieved when you're done, and then you don't even realize it. So make sure that you propose something. You want to outline project objectives. And this is something that you can really tackle at this one pager step, right? So you want to outline what your project objectives are to make sure that you're proposing something. Definitely get help from other graduate students in your group and other professors. I have people that come to my office that talk to me about their OP ideas that are not in my group. And sometimes I can help them, and sometimes I have no idea what they're talking about. But the point is that you don't have to do this by yourself, right? Just like when I write an NSF proposal, I seek out collaborators and I get their advice, right? So don't think that you're doing this all on your own. Ask someone to proofread your report for you and make sure it's someone that can actually proofread. Okay? It's helpful if this is a person. I know it's tempting to put it into AI, but if you have an actual person do it, then they can also help you with clarity of your presentation and making sure you're getting your ideas across and all of that. So definitely getting it proofread. Make a talk that's engaging and recognizable to your report. So you know how I told you that you have to hand it in 2 weeks before your exam? Do not make a new OP in those 2 weeks. Okay, there are times that I go to the oral presentation and like it is not the same as the report, and I don't even know where it came from. So make it recognizable to your report. If you realize during this time, like, oh crap, something like this isn't going to work, that's fine. Put it in your presentation and we'll talk about it. There's no need for you to redo the entire thing in those 2 weeks. Practice your talk in front of a group of people. So get your friends together, buy them some pizza, and make them listen to you. People tell me that lots of times their practices are a lot harder than their actual exam because we don't have the pizza. Nobody feeds us. But yeah, people tell me that like if you get, some good students together that can really give you a hard time and really ask you a lot of in-depth questions about your project, like this could be just as helpful as your exam. And then dress professionally. I already said that. But please don't wear your pajamas. Thank you. All right. Things that you should not do. Don't forget to reference what you use. So if you use AI, if you're using figures from other papers, if you're using images from Google or whatever, please make sure that you reference them both in your report and in your presentation. Don't fabricate data, okay? So I know you might want to be like, oh, okay, well, I would do this reaction and this is what the kinetic trace should look like, but we're not supposed to teach you to make up data. So don't make up data, go find something in a paper that looks like it, and then you can reference that paper if you want. Or you can use a figure from that paper with the appropriate reference saying, this is what I would expect, right? So, yeah, don't like just try to make things up. Just use the literature for this. Don't make your report a zillion pages because I don't want to read a zillion pages. So part of this exercise is being concise, right? Like when Dr. Wilker and I write proposals to like the NSF and whatever, you get 15 pages. That's it. If you can't say what you need to say in 15 pages, like you're probably not getting funded. So make sure that you are concise and use your space well. Okay, don't start your report the week before it's due. It should go without saying, but again, I've seen it. So don't start it the week it's due. Don't make your talk really long because you're not going to get through it. So we said earlier about 20 slides, we are going to interrupt you. So if you figure 20 slides, 20-minute talk plus lots of interruption and discussion, that'll probably take you an hour. Don't think that you don't need to practice your talk. Everybody needs to practice their talk. Okay. I'm just finishing 18 years at Purdue and I still practice my talks. Okay. Not every single talk, but if I'm giving an important talk and I'm nervous about it, I practice it. So don't think that you're above practicing. Don't dress like you rolled out of bed. Obvious reasons. Don't think that you can't get input from others, right? So we've already talked about this a little bit, right? No person has to do this by themselves. So as you're coming up with your idea, be thinking about like, oh, I could ask this person, or oh, I could ask that person, or oh, I know so-and-so. I know this group does this. I know so-and-so. Maybe I can ask my friend in that group and they can help guide me to like a graduate student that is more focused on that or something, right? So use your network. And this is something that we ask you too on your individual development plans, right? We ask you who's in your network. So think about, how you could use your network when you're writing this. And then don't disregard the divisional guidelines because those are important and your PI knows them, we hope. And so they are going to kind of hold you to those guidelines. Right? All right. I have 3 minutes. Okay, who has questions? Yes.
Ideas.
Yeah, so something that I like to do is like I read a paper and then I read like a paper that's in a field not too far away and then I'm like, can I combine these? But I definitely think that starting out with reading, right? So just read a bunch of random articles that you think maybe sound cool and then think about, oh, okay, well, maybe I could solve this problem they talk about in the paper. And like, especially when you're reading the papers, like the introductions are really where they talk about like the field and kind of what the challenges are. And then they go on in their paper to say, like, this is how we tackle this very specific challenge. But the intros are great places to find information about kind of the challenges in the fields. And then also, in the journal Inorganic Chemistry, we publish these viewpoints. Those are really good because those are more like opinion based. So we publish, our peers' opinions and things like that. There's reviews you can look at, online forums and things like that. But if it were me, I would start with reading and then I would try to figure out maybe how to like combine 2 ideas or something like that. Yes.
When we're coming up with ideas, should we stay strictly within what our committees like specializes in? Or should we like be with something they're just a little familiar in? Like
I wouldn't really worry about your committee's specialty. I would more do it based on what you're interested in and make sure it's not too close to what you're doing. I mean, I've had people in my group before, right, on drug delivery, right? And I had to go like to my biochem colleagues and like they helped me kind of decipher this so I could be prepared for the exam. So as your committee, it's our job to be prepared for this exam. That being said, like I wouldn't choose something that's so far into left field that like your advisor can't help you, Yeah. Yes. So like if you're working on your OP and you've handed it in and then you go to make your presentation and you realize it won't work, that's okay. Oh, then pivot to something else. Pivot. Yeah, don't get too invested in something that you think's not gonna work. It's like a relationship. Don't get too invested in something that's not gonna work. All right, that's why I encourage you to look at multiple topics at once. Yes, last one.
Okay, so is something we're pretty sure what about monetary?
Oh, don't worry about money.
Okay.
Money is no object.
Okay.
That's how you know this is not reality.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Pratt. All right, moving on. Move on to the
excited to see what advice you have.
That's not bad. I would have Dr. Uyuka represent his material.
It's fine.
Oh, yeah, don't call me that.
Yeah.
PCAM, his materials. Sorry, I made a mistake. Yeah. Typo. His materials. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. I can pretend to be a physical chemist as well. So
You did all of the details, sorry, so, now that you want me to come. But they're all worried that we're gonna get up there and be like. You couldn't fail, no matter what. Not like that, it's stressful, but this is arguably one of the best. Parts of graduate school in terms of your development with scientists, because what happens is. Or maybe, it's me, but a lot of you right now, you're sort of working at the technician level. Where your advisor tells you what to do and you go do it. The reason we have you, there's a lot of reasons why we have you do these, but for me, the most important thing and why I will always fight this program. Is this is gonna change your thought process from doing what other people tell you, doing derivative things, to coming up with your own ideas.
We're recording. Can you please stand near the?
Oh, we're recording.
Yeah, thank you.
We're
Thank
recording,
you.
so I have to watch what I say now. All right, so anyways, that basically what's gonna happen is once you finish your OP and you go through the process and you pass, and most of you will pass, so it'll probably be fine. That you're gonna look at science differently, rather, you're gonna look at things, oh, what could I do? Or, oh, that's interesting, could I take it over here or do something different? So this is very good. But that's later. Right now, you're just worried about getting through it. Coming up with the idea is the hardest part, right? And what you have to do is you probably are gonna have to come up with a whole bunch of ideas before you find a good one, right? And like Suzanne said, don't fixate, don't get too wedded to one thing. So start early and come up with lots and lots of ideas, right? When I was applying for academic jobs, I wrote 5 different proposals, right? I don't work on I work on one of them, right? I got a job. Another thing is that you think we're not doing this just to hurt you, because any job you have later, you're gonna be writing a lot of proposals, so you need to practice. You need to write this and present with it in mind that we're human too, right? So basically, looking at your proposals, sitting through that, it's just extra work for us. This is not the highlight of our semester, right? It's just on top of everything else we have to do. So just acknowledge that and treat it that way. Suzanne already sort of touched on this. Like nobody, when a thing like this gets dropped on your desk and it's just a solid wall of text, nobody wants to look at that, right? But some pictures and stuff, maybe it'll be all right. We have to read it through, and then this is related. Write your proposal. When you get to the point you have your friends read it, and you read theirs. And what you're going to find is, because when you write it, it's obviously completely clear in your head. When they see it, it's going to turn out that it's not clear. And conversely, you're going to read somebody else's, and you're going to say, I don't really understand what you're talking about here. And then so it's actually helpful for you to have other people read yours, but it's also helpful for you to read theirs. And you'll sort of understand how this process goes a little bit. And then you'll see that it's not like tons of fun to do this. So again, back to, with this in mind, also clarity is really, really important, right? If I'm reading something, this is true when I review papers and grants these days. If I'm reading something and I have to read a paragraph 3 times and I still don't know what they said, I'm just rejecting it. I don't have time to deal with that. Nobody does. Nobody wants to do that. It's not pleasant. So you got to be clear. Yeah, the real world works that way. I can do another slide forward. Yes. Okay. What you're working on, though, this is the coolest stuff you can think of because it's your science, right? You don't work on somebody else's project. Come up with your own things. Don't work on something that's trendy just because it's trendy. I remember there was a time when I started here. Nano is like, it's just sort of background these days, but there was a time when it was super, super trendy. And every proposal, I would sit through 20 OPs, all about making a new nanoparticle, all for the same damn thing. It's no, you don't want to don't do something trendy just because you think people will like it. And sometimes it actually goes the other way. It's too trendy, people will dislike it. This should be obvious, but I've seen this enough times. If you're in there, I guess we're doing this by division now, so it's materials, so you're probably not doing this, but if you're designing a drug or a material or a catalyst or anything, right? You need to have several options. I've seen a lot of proposals where people said, I have this idea. Here's drugs are the easiest thing to pick on. Here's this active compound, and here's this other compound that has selectivity to bind to this one thing and this one thing only. I'm going to put the two together with an alkyl chain, and now I have a selective drug. If it were that easy, all the pharma companies would be doing this, but they don't, because it doesn't work, right? That you need to make a bunch of things, a material, a drug, a catalyst, and you kind of have to do structure function studies to see what works and what doesn't. So don't propose one thing. Like in the drug case, also two people say, oh, I have this compound that's going to kill viruses or cancer or bacteria or whatever. Well, you know what? We already can do that with bleach and lead, hydrogen peroxide, right? So it's going to be selective. And so structure function studies are better for any materials or whatever. If you have trouble getting a topic, onto the question of where do you get ideas? I think a very good place to get ideas is if there's an area that you really like, read review articles, because the good review articles will tell you what's known. The really good review articles will also tell you what's not known. And what Suzanne said, you got to read. You got to read. Don't just think you're going to sit around under a tree chewing a pencil. An idea is going to come to you, and then you're going to go. Science doesn't work that way. You have to know things. You have to know what the idea of I'm not going to put my kid in school. I'm just going to have them explore nature, and they're going to be this wonderful stuff. Well, no, you got to know the basics, right? So you have to intake a lot of information before you can produce ideas. So one. In that context, maybe there's something you'd like to do, something you'd like to achieve. Think of an end goal. That's what you want, even if it's far-fetched. Work backwards. What would it take to get there? You need to know what's known. And then this to me is important. Related. Pick something that fascinates you. Do not worry about impressing us with the impact of what you're going to do, because you're not going to cure cancer. I'm sorry, right? You're not going to make the new battery technology that's going to displace lithium. You're not going to make the new solar cell, right? And even just on this campus, there's probably 100 labs working on each one of those things. And none of them are probably going to work. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of people go into these things thinking that if I don't do something really, really huge, they're not going to like it. No, it's not. I work on adhesives. How much do you think about adhesives every day? Not at all. It's niche. But I've made a pretty good career out of it. We're the only lab on campus that does this. And we have so much demand of so many people that need so many things we can't handle anywhere close to. We've started companies, they can't handle the whole thing. So there are niche things that can be worth billions of dollars or impact life in tremendous ways. That's fine. The most important thing, don't hide, don't look for niche, but it has to interest you. I think adhesives are really cool. Nobody else does. That's fine. That's great. I'll just play around. But basically, it's got to interest you. And when you're really interested in something that comes through, when you're bored and you're just going through the motions and you're giving us a topic because you don't have a good idea and you think it's something we want to see, we can tell. It's dull. We won't like it. You still might pass, but it's not good for anybody. I think of hobbies as a really good place to get your ideas, because what we do started just from my scuba diving and just looking around. Oh, I wonder how that works. I wonder how that works. Turns out a lot of this stuff wasn't known. You could literally go outside on a hike in the woods, and if you look around, you say, "Oh, I wonder how that works." There will be things out there that are not known. So if you're already putting time into a hobby just because that's where you spend your free time, there's probably some science there you can pick up. So don't worry about the big things. Just do what you like. Relax. Everybody who really, really wants to be here will pass. Okay. Before I said you're going to fail, I was mostly joking. I mean, there occasionally, but I've seen enough of these things. The people who don't make it through, when push comes to shove, they don't really want to be here for all sorts of reasons. If you really truly want to be here, you really truly want to get a PhD, you really truly want to be a PhD level scientist when you get out of here, you'll make it through the OP. Okay. It might be smooth, it might be rough, but you'll get through. If you really truly want to be here, you have to be honest with yourself about that. And then try to have fun, because like for me, for all of us, the best thing about science is getting why we're here, why we put up with all the stuff that we do in this job, like sitting through OPs, whatever, is we get to work on what we want to work on. We get to work on the science that we think is the coolest thing ever. And for you, that's going to be what you come up with. And so this is the chance. This is when you get to come up with just to your taste. Don't worry about us. Just the coolest thing in the world. Just find that and work on that. Okay? That's what I got. I don't know. We haven't really made any. The division is kind of new. We don't really have our act together. We just kind of exist. We have a few meetings. We don't really talk about, we haven't got to the point where this has come up. I think we haven't because there haven't been any issues. A lot of the rule changes and a lot of the specifics we have in like the grad handbook or the opening come from
They were
something
inspired by people before you.
inspired by people before you. Yeah, usually when things go wrong, that's when you have to
So
start.
would you say in the materials, OP that you've sat in, would you say that they're pretty different from the students' research? Or would you say?
Oh. Yeah, so this may be me, we haven't really discussed this as a division, but for me personally, I think the topic has to be different from anything you've ever done. Right? That's the whole point to me. It's coming up with your own ideas, coming up with what's most interesting to you and generating ideas, right? If it's a derivative of what you do in your lab now, what's the point of doing that? That's useless, right? The whole purpose here is to force you to generate the skill of coming up with totally new research ideas. This is chemistry. There's some fields where that's hard to do. In chemistry, there's like literally stuff, like I said, you just go outside, see things, and I want to do that, and it's not known. There's so much you can do in chemistry. So this is where we're pushing you to develop this skill of coming up with something totally new. We have, as a division, we haven't really discussed this, but this is absolutely what I would encourage you to do. Okay. Irrespective of, I know in the PChem division, I guess I'm a physical chemist now. The PChem division is trying to make the OPs just be a continuation of your PhD research. I'm absolutely opposed to that. I think they're all morons. No, I think that this short circuits a major part of your education and getting a PhD. Right? You're getting a PhD, you're not physicians.
That's a question, like, if I'm going to get like something very new that I didn't study or work on.
That's where you want to be.
A lot of questions. So I will read a lot.
Yes. Yes.
But I will still have a lot of things that I don't know.
That's okay.
How to answer questions. I will be able to answer some questions, but I think would be the ratio between knowing and not knowing would be higher than things that I already do and go through every day.
Sure. I'm going to tell you something that is going to sound generic, but it's true. Flip the roles. You're the professor, and the student is proposing a research topic within a given area. How much do you expect them to know? Certainly the first level of information about what they're doing. You expect them to know the background information of the field and what's been done and what's not been done. You expect them to know the mechanics of, where's that starting material come from? Oh, I buy it. Okay, say you can't buy it. How are you going to synthesize it? Or what you're using that instrument to characterize it. Well, how does it really work? What's the principle behind it? Whatever, right? But you're not expected to know everything. So as Suzanne said, there will be points at which we ask questions. We're not purposely trying to find what you don't know. We're sort of probing the depths of what you do know. And so there's going to be an endpoint there where you're like, I don't know. But you think it should come to you, back to Suzanne's point, read a lot. You have to read a lot. Okay. You just have to know things. And by the more you read in a given field, then it becomes easy to understand. One of the questions that always comes up is, how do I know, what's known versus what's not known in a field? If you get a body of literature there and you really read enough, it becomes very obvious. So, yeah.
That'll conclude our material.
All right, thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
And move on to the physical chemistry.
The actual physical chemistry. Okay.
Did you get to change that? I sent some modifications this morning. Did you? Okay, thank you. Should I begin or wait for a minute? Okay, okay, great. Okay, if you were here for the previous discussion by John Wilker, I really liked it. I agree almost 100%. I'll mention when it's just a little different something. But I liked his recommendations very much, and I'm going to be repeating some of what he said, except with my South American accent. But it's the same, mostly the same repetition. Okay. So I just have two slides. First is a brief summary of what is expected for the Pecan Division's OP, along with hopefully some helpful tips to prepare. Okay, so first, what is expected? With a couple caveats. First, some specific expectations vary among faculty, right? And that's just part of the challenge. Some committees like it some way, other committees like it another way. So you'll have to sense by talking with your committee beforehand how what's the best way to go forward with the OP. But the general expectations are really the same for all. The OP should be original, it should be interesting, and generally correct. Okay, from the written document and the oral presentation, it should be clear that you, first of all, have identified and can explain one concrete problem that you are proposing to solve. This may, in the Pecan Division, this may or may not be directly linked to your PhD project. John Wilker emphasized how in the Inorganic Division, it cannot be directly linked to your PhD. And you should discuss this with your committee beforehand and make sure that everyone is on the same page with that. Two, you have studied and understood the fundamental physical chemistry principles that provide the correct background for your proposal. So if the proposal is on some problem on kinetics, then you need to be ready to answer some basic questions about kinetics or thermodynamics. That's the relevant Pecan background. And three, you have given some serious thought to how you will attempt to solve the problem and what the main challenges are. Okay, I think that's all for the first slide. And now some tips for preparing. First, maybe the most important one, and I just saw John said almost the same thing, and we were not coordinating. Make it interesting. You need to be genuinely interested and try to convey your excitement to the committee. Maybe one way to do this, you try to, you feel that you are interested, right? And then you try to talk to yourself and pin down, why do you find this interesting? And then explain this as best as possible. At least that's how I go about it when I'm writing proposals. I have a gut feeling that this is interesting. I don't really know why. And then in the shower, just thinking about it, I realize, oh, that's why this is so interesting, and then explain it. This one is important in Pecan, maybe especially. You have to be ready to explain the meaning of every word or plot or comment from your written document and slides. If something is not necessary to make your point, maybe better not include it. Practice is also something that John had in his slides. And when practicing, put yourself in the shoes of someone who is listening to your presentation for the first time, like the committee member. And you'll want to know whether you as the speaker has a clear proposal in mind. Ask yourself whether you know the meaning of everything you are showing on your slides, and strive for clarity. Also, here the committee will be impatient to know what your main point is from the beginning, and why it's interesting and important. So maybe a good idea to do, this is not a requirement, this is just something that I know often faculty find useful in this, is to have one slide at the beginning, maybe, that clearly states the problem you're proposing to solve and why. Just that one slide is hard to do, but it's helpful, and then everyone is on the same page, and it's just a good way to go. You may have chosen a topic that no one in the room knows much about. If you chose something that's completely unrelated to your PhD work, and it's also unrelated to the committee's work, and that's fine, but it raises some special challenges because the questions will go to the core and to probing the overall logic, and if no one in the room knows what's happening, then sometimes the OPs can go in a bad direction. It's not a problem to make a few mistakes or to say a few things that are incorrect. That's very normal. The problem that we often encounter is when the presenter does not recognize this and then try to mask some misunderstandings with some confusion, and then that's another occasion when the OPs don't go so well. So something is incorrect, and then you admit it, and you show the committee that, oh, yeah, that's true. No, I didn't think about this, and then there's some learning, and we move on. I think that's all I had. Yes, that was quick. Some questions, yes.
Someone said. How? Where kind of? What's kind of the spectrum? How do we judge what is a little bit too close to what we're doing? As opposed to.
Yeah, so it's a good that will change case by case basis. So you should talk with your advisor and your committee members and see what their feeling is about. My recommendation would be that you choose your favorite topic, and then consult with your committee and see if they agree this is an appropriate topic for the OP. They'll let you know if it's too close or not close enough in some cases to your PhD work. Choose your favorite. Trevor.
Should we include any sort of timeline to see, like, let's say we were to get a team together for work on this, we have to lay out how we would break it down. This is who would be what. This would be the timeline for it, like the grant.
Yes, because that will show whether the proposal is doable or not, right? I know this is a pretend timeline because in most cases you're not actually going to do what you're proposing to do, although in some cases you might. And I think it's not a requirement. I think it's a good idea to have a timeline of how long it would realistically take for you to complete the activities. The reason for that is that if you are estimating the timeline and it comes to 100 years, then it's not a realistic. Sometimes OPs don't have a timeline, but when you probe into how long it would take to do these experiments or these calculations, it comes maybe not 100 years, but still approaching that. And so that's not a good project to propose. Yeah.
Yes, I did have an accident, like I was presenting a seminar in my department and while I was going to do the seminar, so if I found out that the paper I'm going to present missed critical data and missed critical point actually made deteriorate all their idea. And the paper I chose was Nature Com paper just published and it's
Oh, wow. So this really happened. You found all these mistakes in
yes,
this.
and then I went to the seminar. I presented the paper properly, and then I said, I think this paper did miss this and that and that, and actually the audience agreed, but why did this happen to my book? Like I found out that this idea is not working, or does have a critical problem that if I present in half an hour, this format trying to size the idea, they're gonna figure it out. Should I declare that in the opinion, this is them, I did my work well prepare. And on the other hand, when I find the Nature Com paper, it took a year to be published, a lot of reviewers and they made a mistake. So how to handle that situation?
Well, they may have to retract it, right? But I've been in several OPs where at the end, the conclusion is that what's proposed is not viable, is flawed in many ways or several ways, and still a successful OP because there was a lot of learning in the process and it's clear that the student thought the issues through and some mistakes, but it's not disqualifying for the OP. I think it should be disqualifying for a Nature Communications paper. It may be that depending on the committee and what they think, it may be that at the end they say, okay, you're going to pass. However, conditional to your giving us an extra page explaining why the proposal is not viable as you presented. So there can be, it's actually frequent, I don't know in biochemistry, it's frequent that you get some extra work at the end, maybe write 1 or 2 pages, improving a few things and clarifying a few things. Yeah.
It's not, I think we're really
Okay.
committed away from time, so I think we'll thank Dr. Wasserman. Switching over to,
Good luck, everyone.
Alright. The lion isn't around, but Betsy is going to cover a section, and after Betsy's, you're getting division, so if you're there for that as well.
Yeah, so I am obviously not Professor Lyon, but I serve on both biochemistry and organic committees. So I'm going to talk about biochem and go through kind of Professor Lyon's slides for biochem. And then I have some separate slides for organic. And so we'll go over those after that. So feel free to interrupt me as I'm going if you have questions about particular slides. And so one of the biggest things about your OP that's important is that it is hypothesis driven. So you do not want to be doing a high throughput screen. The reason is that it's very hard to defend, whereas if you have a hypothesis, you can fall back on the prior research, the premise, in order to support that hypothesis. You also want your hypothesis to be as specific and clear as it can be, because if it is super complicated and convoluted, we're going to have a hard time following. And if the faculty are having a hard time following, that's a bad sign. That's not. So as far as things that you need to be considering when you choose a topic, I think Professor Wasserman's point of it needs to be interesting to you is definitely an important one, because if you're not interested in it, we can tell. It's obvious when you present whether you're interested. But some other things that I think are also important. Novelty. So you should be choosing something that is novel.
you don't want to play it too safe, because if it is not particularly novel, we might ask kind of, well, why are you even doing this? What's the point? That also ties into significance. Why is it important? And so these novelty and significance both kind of tie into this why question. Why are you doing it? Why do we care? And so you need to be able to answer that. Feasibility. This ties in, Professor Wasserman was just also talking about this, timelines. You do not necessarily need to show a timeline, but you should be thinking about this should not take more than, say, around 3 years. If what you're proposing is going to take more than 3 years, it's probably too much. Guess what? That means you're not going to make a drug. We'll come back to that. But so there are kind of 4 major questions that you want to think about as you're putting together your OP. Why is what you're proposing important? What's already been done? You need to know what's already been done, because if you don't, then that's a huge problem. And so that's one place where people can get in trouble if you can't clearly state what's been done before. You're going to need to tell us that, because most likely we won't know that background. So you're going to need to pull out things that have been done previously and tell us that. Then talking about what you're intending to do. So what experiments are you doing? And why is this novel? Why is this innovative? Now, every technique you're using doesn't need to be innovative, but if you're going to use a Western blot to probe for this protein, what is that going to tell us? Sort of. And kind of how are you actually going to do this? And so we'll get into more details of this later, but you need to know the experiments you're going to do, how they work, and what controls you need. Because controls are a huge part, because if you get certain results, how are you going to know that those results are right? Questions? All right. As far as the formatting goes for biochemistry, oh, sorry, did you have a question?
No.
No, okay. So, as far as formatting for biochemistry, we require an R21 style. So an R21 style grant, there are examples out there kind of on NIAID's website. You want either Arial or Helvetica, black font, 11 points. You really shouldn't have more than 7 pages. We do not want to read a small novel. You do not have to tell us everything that's ever been done in the field. You need to give us the background that we need to know to judge your proposal. Specific aims and references are not included in that page limit, but figures and tables are included in that page. So specific aims should be 1 page. And so this is due in August prior to that OP to your committee. The reason we do this is to make sure that we think the topic is defendable. So if you give something to us that we don't think is likely to be successful OP, we'll give you comments on it to tell you either what to change or if you need to go back to the drawing board. That said, I would talk to your advisor before that's due. Now, you can't talk significantly with your advisor, but you can tell them, here's my overall plan. A, is this far enough from our research? And B, like, is this acceptable? And they probably won't tell you much more than yes or no. But you can talk to other committee members more generally about your idea, and they can also give you feedback. Yes.
This feedback will be yes or no as well, or should it leave us more?
So the feedback that you get on your specific aims page and that you get from committee members can be more. From your advisor, it's typically yes or no, because typically your advisor is not supposed to help you with this, but your committee members can give you feedback.
For advisor, if your advisor is more hands-off in general when it comes to OP, it likes to say, and you know your OP topic overlap with the other professor,
Yes.
can you send it to them and like meet with them to have?
Yes, please. The only person you really can't talk about it with is your own advisor.
You can give it to, now I'm not guaranteeing that that professor will give you a lot of help. They might not. You can also talk to other people, other grad students and postdocs about it as well. And I would advise you to do that. As you're coming up with your idea, talk to people. Talk to senior grad students, talk to postdocs, get feedback.
As you go forward in your life, if you become a professor or if you work in industry, you're going to be talking to other people about your ideas. So that is perfectly okay to do. As far as the specific aims page goes, specific aims pages, they're very specific things you should have in them. I actually have a notebook outside of my office that is an NIH guidelines notebook that actually goes into extreme detail about what should be in a specific aims page. So if you want to come take a look at that, you're welcome to. You can't take it outside my office, but there's a little outside area and there's a photocopier if you want to photocopy stuff. So go for it. But in general, what you need is the identified unmet need, the goals of your proposed research, most oftentimes in the form of aims. You will probably have 2 aims. It is usually not good to have 1 aim. And I would say 4 aims is probably too much. 2, I think, is a good spot. If you read 3, maybe, but I really think 2 is probably the best. And in addition to the goals, your expected outcomes. So what do you think, if everything works, what are you going to get out of this? And if everything works and you get those results, what are the long-term impacts of that work? Your aims page is a standalone document. We should be able to read your aims page and get the sense overall of what your grant is going to be about. It is not an abstract, so it's. Any questions about that? Yeah.
Yeah, so usually when I'm thinking about expected outcomes, I go to each specific aim and say, if this specific aim works, we will learn X. And if specific aim 2 works, we will learn Y. And based on that, these things working will ultimately allow the field to go forward in this direction. Does that kind of help? You don't necessarily need to say in year 1, we will get what. In year 2, we will get what. This is more big picture. What will we learn from this proposal? Yeah.
So for the NIH style ones, was that the specific aim page? There's no citations.
That is true. There are no citations in the specific aims page. That is fine, but you should have citations. No, you should probably put citations in the specific aims page. It kind of depends on. I'm going to go ahead and say put citations in your specific aims page because I think that's easy. Put citations in specific aims page. Different people do specific aims page differently, but it won't hurt for you to put them. And the worst thing they're going to say is take them out, and it's easier to take them out than put them in. So.
And this is kind of the general suggested structure of this specific aims page. And so this is very much coming from this NIH document that I mentioned. And so you're going to have an introductory paragraph that has this opening sentence that kind of describes the big picture, then about your topic, the current knowledge about that topic, and then the gap. And so the gap is the question. The gap is what your proposal is going to address. The statement of need, why do we need to fill that gap? And if we don't meet that gap, what's going to happen? And so you can think about, there's a particular pathway that's important in cancer. We know that it's important in cancer, but we don't know about this particular protein in the pathway. So we need to learn more about what it's doing, in order to understand how it impacts the development of cancer. And if we don't do this, we're going to potentially miss out on a target for future therapeutic development, something along those lines. The what, why, who paragraph. So this is your second paragraph. You want your long-term goal. So your long-term goal might be that we're going to target this protein for a cancer therapeutic. That's not what you're doing in the proposal. That's your 20-year goal. The overall objective of this application might be to determine the relationship of this protein to certain type of cancer development, and your central hypothesis and how it was formulated. So what you hypothesize is happening, this protein is phosphorylating this other protein that then goes into cancer signaling, and this was formulated based on this previous data. For those of you walking in, I am doing biochem right now. Don't worry, you have not missed the organic one. Come in, you can still come in and you can still sit down. Then you will have your specific aims paragraph. This is in quotations because these usually aren't paragraphs. Usually each specific aim you'll have a couple of sentences for. Generally within that, it's good to have a hypothesis within each aim, saying this is the hypothesis for this aim, this is the hypothesis for my second aim. And then the last paragraph is that payoff paragraph where we're talking about those expected outcomes and that positive long-term impact these results will have. Questions about this? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You need to focus on the novelty in both of them, or do you, like, for example, you do something novel for that specific application. You have to have novelty in both aspects, even though you're getting to explain both of them in your.
So I think it's nice to describe them both if there is novelty in both. I think saying that I'm going to make an impact in the development of these new materials, which have never been made before, and they could have this great application in this biological setting. And I think talking about both is good because if you have impact in both areas, that makes your proposal stronger, right? So I would.
No, though it's still fine to have it.
Yes, if it's more one way or the other, that's okay. But yeah. Right. As far as research strategy goes, background and significance should be 1 to 2 pages, really explaining the problem and kind of the current state of the field. And again, emphasizing where those gaps are. And so you want to make it clear how you're addressing those gaps. You then want to talk about your innovation. And so innovation, there can be many different ways of having innovation. So we're not saying that there's only this one way, but thinking about innovation and then your approach. And so this is in your approach is where you get into the nitty-gritty details of more kind of what you are doing and kind of making sure you have those controls. Make sure you're thinking about how you're collecting the data, analyzing the data. Statistical analyses are probably important, thinking about what's actually significant. Make sure you talk about potential problems and alternative strategies. Everything your PI tells you to do works the first time, right? No. So why in the world do you think the first thing you think of is always going to work? It's not. So make sure you do have these alternative strategies as well. All right. As far as the thesis research checkpoint, this should be short. Stick to 20 minutes. Again, you're going to have your intro. You want to make sure that your committee understands your project. So what are the major questions and what are you addressing? You want to spend most of your time talking about what you've actually already done, show them that, and then also talk about some of the future directions. And so where are you planning to go with your research? What comes next? What are you excited about? And what resources do you need to be successful? And then also, what are your plans for papers? Because that's really the next important thing is you getting papers out. And so as far as general tips, the OP should not just be an incremental step. So this protein was shown to be important in this cancer. We're going to go over to this other cancer and show it's going to be important. Probably isn't enough. Do not try to cure a disease. You're not making a drug. And again, nothing magical about 3 aims. 2 is great. 4 probably is too many though. Ask your peers for help. Ask those who've already gone through it if you can see their prelims, and talk to them about your ideas. When you're doing this, make sure you're including those controls and backup plans. I've already said that once, but if I've said it once, if I say it more than once, that's really important, right? So controls and backup plans and statistical analyses if relevant. And I think Professor Wasserman mentioned this before me, but anything in your proposal or on your slides is fair game for question. Make your own figures, because if there's other random stuff on a figure that you don't need, guess who's going to ask about it? Your committee member. And you don't want to talk about it. So make your own figures. Try and be as clear and concise as possible. Your actual prelim, when you go straight through it, should only be about 30 minutes because you are going to get interrupted a lot, and that is normal. And so you want to get to your overall goals quickly in the presentation. Having a slide about these are my specific aims is a good way to start. You will want backup slides for kind of questions that you anticipate. So you're going to give practice talks to your group. You're going to give practice talks to your friends. What are the questions that come up again and again? You might want a backup slide for that. On the topic of questions, you don't know everything. That's okay. We don't expect you to. One of the points of the prelim, the OP, is to ask you questions until we get to the point where you don't know something. So at a certain point, it's okay to say, I don't know. Now, then they might try and poke you and be like, well, can you hypothesize? Can you potentially come up with a potential reason for this? Then it's fine. My biggest thing for you is do not pretend, do not make stuff up and be like, yes, this is the reason why. When you don't actually know that, because ultimately your committee is going to be like, no, it's not. And that's when you get in trouble. If you don't know an answer, it's okay to say, I don't know, but I think it might be related to this. All right, I think that is the end of the biochem slides. Any question on biochem? Or generally, it doesn't really have to be biochem. Yeah.
Couple of questions.
Yeah.
I don't have prelim in 3 weeks, so.
Oh, goodness. Okay, you're very soon.
The board that in the thesis part, if there is somewhere that's done by a colleague in the project,
Yes.
I can talk about that and should say that other colleagues have done this work.
So what I would say is if there's a piece of data that your colleague got, show the data, put their pictures and their name and say, here is some key preliminary data that so-and-so did, and I'm building.
And if they are doing the synthesis and I'm doing the diagram, it's fine.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, say this person is synthesizing this and I will study it in this context. Totally.
If I'm having an idea that is opposite to the trend in the literature,
Mhm.
but it is feasible, and I do want to know how I can link a pathway that is not really studied in the literature, but could be an important pathway or a link pathway.
Sure.
How to present it, like how to find just the links in the prior literature and propose this easily, or
Yeah, so how did you come up with the link? What did you read? What did you?
there was just one paper that is saying that this happens, but no one investigated it as is totally opposite to what we have in the literature.
And so what I would say is you need to discuss that paper and why they're saying that and kind of why you think that, which is opposite to the rest of the literature, why do you think that's true? And what convinced you that you think this is actually the way? And make that super clear to us. It's okay to go against current lit if you have a good reason why and you have experiments that answer. You can be wrong. Your hypothesis can be totally wrong. But you want your experiments to clearly state whether you're right or wrong. Being wrong doesn't mean you fail your OP. Being able to design experiments that say one way or
Then C to do the organic.
The organic, yep. All right, I'm gonna switch to organic. Yay, organic.
some of this is gonna be, main thing is you want a topic that's interesting to you. If you're not interested in it, no one else in the room is gonna care.
As far as coming up with ideas, I like reading reviews. I think that's one place you can find it, but there are many ways to find ideas. I put here some common topics for organic students. Multi-step syntheses, new synthetic methodology, chemical biology, and or designing probes. You are not making a new drug. Remember that this is a 2 to 3 year project, not decades. Or functional materials based on molecular designs. And so the biggest thing is that it needs to be hypothesis driven. You need to be able to defend your presentation. If you do a high throughput screen and say, we'll get a hit, how easy is that to defend? I can just say, no, you won't. And so having a hypothesis about why you think this is, that is supported by prior literature, is really the important thing. Talk to others about your ideas. When you're developing, talk to older graduate students, talk to postdocs. As you think you're getting an idea, then that's a good time to go talk to your committee members. You can run it by your advisor to make sure it's not too close to what you're already doing. Because in organic, I know we want it not related. Biochem can be a little finicky here, but all right. For organic, your format can either be an NIH style, kind of R21, or an NSF grant style. Either is fine. There are examples for the NIH that can be found at kind of this website. The other thing that can be extremely helpful are these grant writer application workbooks. There's one for NSF and there's one for NIH. They're a little pricey, which is why I put them in the area outside of my office in 4103. You can go take a look at them. You can photocopy them. Please do not remove them from the area outside 4103, but definitely come take a look. They have a lot of good information about how to write grants, the specific aims page that you have to have for August, things like that. Please do not exceed 6 to 8 pages. No one wants to read that much. This is not a review. This is not you telling us everything there is to know about a field. That 6 to 8 pages does include figures, tables, charts. It does not include that 1-page specific aims page that should become at the beginning, and it does not count your references. So you can have as many references as you want. In general, using Arial or Helvetica, and a font size of 11 or larger. Remember, we are busy people and we read things quickly. So if you have everything all scrunched together, we're also old. Our eyes aren't great. So if you make everything tiny, we're going to get mad. And if you make the professor mad, we're not going to like your OP. So it's better to kind of try and make things look nice, separate out paragraphs, have white space. I suggest having at least one figure or table per page. You should be able to know what you're doing based on your figures and tables, because some of us might not read it that carefully, but we might skim it and look at the figures. I'm not saying everyone, but I'm saying some of us. Figure legends, please let them be at least 9. If you can't read it, I know I can't read it. All right. Again, we've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but you should have a specific aims page that is 1 page. you should generally have 2 to 3 aims. 1 is not enough. 4 is probably too many. These aims should not depend on one another. What does that mean? You should be able to do aim 1 and aim 2 at the same time. You should not be synthesizing molecule, testing molecule. Because what if that synthesis doesn't work? If that synthesis doesn't work, you can't do that second aim. So those should be not dependent on one another. As far as thinking about the sections to include, regardless of whether you're doing the kind of NSF or NIH format, you always are going to need a significance and background. Why is it important? If you can't tell us why we should care about this, you're in trouble. What's been done before? You should also know what's been done in the field and why what you're proposing is different. Why is it new? And so what's novel about your approach? Why should we care? And so as far as the approach goes, what are you actually going to do? If you're proposing a total synthesis, okay, so you're putting these steps together, why do you think those steps will work? If you're doing some sort of assay, what has been done before in such assays, things like that. You should also include controls where necessary. For organic, if you're doing a total synthesis, I know controls aren't really a thing. But if you're doing any sort of biological, or if you're doing any sort of testing of like what types of functions materials have, you might want to think about those controls. And for no matter what you do, you should have alternative approaches. Because when I come in and say, no, that step's never going to work, what are you going to do in a total synthesis? You better have a backup plan. Because if it's just like, oh, that's going to be a problem. Now, if you have one step that's problematic, we're not going to fail you. It's going to be fine. What's problematic is if you have multiple steps that we're like, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to work. And when I've been in OPs like that before, we typically do that conditional pass. And so what that means is that we might ask you to go write about some alternatives to those steps. Start early. Start thinking about it now. I know you just got done with the school year and you're like, I just want to focus on research, and you should focus on research, but take 20 to 30 minutes a day to be reading and thinking. And as it gets closer and closer to August, you might need to spend a little more time on it in order to get that specific aims page done. I love this cartoon. With a little practice, writing can be intimidating, and it's better to pull ball. That's exactly what you want, right? No. You want to be clear. One of the worst things is run-on sentences. If your sentence is 4 lines long, it's too long. Try and make it simple. And as far as your presentation goes, your proposal part should be 30 minutes. Your research part that's about your current research should be about 20. You want to minimize background slides to what is necessary for us to understand what you're doing. Remember, anything extraneous just gives us more areas to ask questions that you might not know the answer to. Focus most slides on your proposal and try to have less text. This is a terrible slide. This is awful. Y'all are bored. Y'all don't want to read all this text. So have backup slides for key mechanisms or questions, and again, include controls if it is necessary. And the most important thing is make sure to practice early and practice more than once. So have a practice talk, figure out what the issues are. You can change things between your written document and your presentation if you find key weaknesses. That's fine. You probably want to tell us that you're changing it during your presentation, but if someone points out that's never going to work, you don't have to. Your life doesn't depend on that step. You can change it in your presentation. All right, that is it for me. I'm a minute over. I apologize. Any questions?
supplementary of the annual report, we just add, I asked Dindy and she said that we add to the, for the research summary, we add like works that we have done in the couple of months just after the.
Yeah.
And we separate all of them or we change inside the documents itself.
Change it inside.
We change that, so we don't do separate.
No.
And also Susan had said that we can use AI, but we have to decide which parts we have used.
So AI is a great question. You need to tell us what you've done with it.
Okay.
In general,
In the presentation or in the document, like say.
both,
Both.
both. So if you're using AI to help with your writing, you need to tell us. Brian might have more specific advice on this, but my advice would be to tell us at the end of your document, I used AI to check grammar for this. This was the prompt I would use when I submitted. Brian, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, so Grad Studies is working on guidance for the whole grad program. We're taking a permissive with disclosure stance. So we're looking for students to describe how they're using artificial intelligence. The idea being that, you know, ultimately the core idea of the proposal is still yours. It's expecting it, but generative AI can really help some of the mechanics of writing through the learning theory, and so that would be okay. So make sure it's still yours, that the ideas are still essentially yours. Also recognize that anything that you present, you are responsible for it. So if people are going to ask questions about it, it's yours.
If you're using AI to generate figures, check those figures carefully. Because it can do things that are wrong. And it would be really sad to have 5 bonds of carbon, especially if you're in organic, and that might be a failable offense. I'm joking, obviously, but just something to consider. All right.
Let's go to analytical then. Thank you, Dr. Perkins. Also, if you have other questions, you may reach out to me. I am around and I'm happy to answer questions.
Come on. All right. Welcome for the marathon continues. Now talking about analytical chemistry, you know, for those of you who've been sticking around for the whole the whole event, you'll see some similarities. So I want to focus on some of the bigger picture considerations with the OP. And I think it's really important to remind ourselves why we're doing this activity. Your committee is trying to make an assessment. Are you ready to complete the rest of your PhD? Have you gathered the sufficient foundational knowledge to conduct science, to be scholarly rigorous, to come up with innovative new ideas? And so when you're thinking about a proposal in analytical chemistry, you want to think of proposals that can help you achieve that goal. Your committee wants to have a conversation with you about science, and have a conversation about an original idea. And if that original idea that you come up with isn't one that allows us to talk about measurement science or talk about
chemical processes, we're going to have a really tough time evaluating whether or not you are in a good position to complete the rest of your PhD. So that's why I wanted to, at the top of this, remind you that what we're trying to get you to do is to demonstrate that you are an independent scientist, that you are ready to carry out the rest of your PhD, that you can look at a particular area of science and critically evaluate it, to identify the key gaps, the key problems that are in that area, and work through a solution. And that you're reasonably good at communicating both those ideas to your committee in a clear manner, both in writing as well as orally defend those ideas. There are plenty of spots in the front. Please come on in. Your committee is full of friendly, curious scientists. So we're asking you questions because we are curious. We want to know a lot of the questions are coming because we don't know the answers to them. And we want to have a conversation. So historically, overall, the passing rate for OPs here at Purdue have been reasonably high. But you should still take this seriously. This is a point of growth in the program for you to enter into a new field, critically evaluate literature, come up with a new idea, and then defend it. Make sure that you have really deeply read all the aspects of your proposal. So if you put something on a slide, that's fair game for us to have a conversation about that component. So be prepared that when you are assembling your materials, you may have maybe pulled a figure that is from a paper and it has multiple panels and multiple aspects of it, and you chose it because you want to focus on one component. But there's another panel in there that's talking about something else. Well, we may start asking you questions about that part too. Okay, so how the heck do you start this process? Right, because we're asking you to write an original proposal, something that's different than your thesis project. So how do you enter into a new field? A good place to start are recently published review articles. So here's some examples of ones that are related to analytical chemistry, as well as chemistry generally. Recognize, though, that this is not going to be the end of your assessment of literature around this particular area of study. Review articles are at a super high level, and it's a summation and also opinions of the writer. And so be prepared to go and actually read the original sources once you've decided that a particular area of study interests you. So after looking at some review articles in there, you'll identify a topic area, general area that you find interesting, read about it a bit more, and hopefully as you're reading the literature, you will identify some recurring problems and challenges. From those challenges, your task is to propose a potential solution. In the analytical division, this often means a new way to make a measurement. And of course, make sure that someone hasn't already done it yet. That's something that happens in the real world. We come up with these brilliant ideas and then find out that 6 months ago, someone already published on it. And I think I already touched on this before, that we want our conversation to be focused on chemistry, particularly analytical chemistry. And so while there is a lot of, you need to incorporate some background to set the stage for why you've identified an important problem and why it impacts society. We don't want to spend all of our time talking about a particular human health concern. We don't want to spend all our time talking about the biology. We want to spend our time talking about the chemistry. Generally speaking, depending on how, your original proposal should not be the same as your thesis project, but depending on how close you are to your area of research, there may be an expectation that you have a greater mastery of that
area of work. If you are your thesis work is on mass spectrometry, but of small molecules, and then you move over to do it on large molecules, very different analyte. There are certainly things that can translate, and we'd expect that you have good have mastery of the foundational topics in that area. But if you go on into a very different area, we understand that it is a little bit more difficult to have the same level of comprehensive understanding. Okay, so that's broad pictures. Formatting, I'll be brief because you can look these things up. There's flexibility in the precise formatting for the written portion. My recommendation is the NIH R21. That's what the NIH uses for 2 to 3 year research programs that don't require preliminary data. If you come from a lab that is largely funded from the NSF, maybe consider using the NSF eager as your sort of format guideline. Either way, these involve they're 5 to 7 pages. They include a single specific aims page that is a summary of the whole proposal. And that summary, that specific aims page, is so important that in August, we are asking that you guys are going to send this to your committee and describe your plans. What is the problem you've selected? What are the goals of your proposal? What do you think is going to come out of it? And what will the impact be if you succeed? And so this should really summarize the whole proposal. Some of you who have seen me talk about this before will probably recognize this, but some suggested structures for your specific aims page, where actually the majority of it is talking about the problem and convincing the reader that you've identified an important problem, an important gap in knowledge. And so that's what you put in your introductory paragraph. Your second paragraph is where you define what your actual objective is for your proposal. Describe a central hypothesis that ties it all together. And then your paragraph on specific aims is actually more of a list where you list out 2 to 3 specific aims. 4 aims is probably too many for the scale of a proposal. 2 is totally fine. There's nothing magical about 3 aims. And then the final paragraph sort of saying, what might be the outcome and impact of your proposal at the end. So after the specific aims page, you're going to submit this in August, but also you will also include this as an important component of the final written portion too. It's also included along with that. You'll probably adapt it and improve it once you get feedback from your committee. And then there's the longer research strategy. So this research strategy should have 3 components. At minimum, these are the background significance. This is, again, where you talk about what you just read in the literature, where you've identified important problems, trends going on, and how you found those important gaps in knowledge. Make an argument for why your approach is innovative and unique and different. And then finally, the largest portion is where you describe how you're going to carry out and accomplish your goals. This describe the experiments, how they're designed, describe how, if you're building an instrument, describe how it's going to be constructed and its central principles. Discuss potential problems, pitfalls, and alternative strategies that you can use if you hit those problems. Okay, so that's the written portion. Then you're going to come to your actual oral defense. Prepare to be interrupted a lot and have a lot of, this is a conversation, remember. So when you're preparing slides, you should actually be preparing for a pretty short presentation, only 20 to 30 minutes. I guarantee you, we will stretch it out to fill the time. And so because of that, I recommend that everyone get to the point quickly. Describe what your objective is. If you spend too much time, winding up, talking about your background, we're going to get distracted and start asking you questions about things that aren't relevant because you're not solving that problem. Tell us what the problem is and what your proposed solution is. Tell it to us early so we don't get distracted. And then it helps us understand why you're working through the background. I think it's important not to make up things. both if you get stumped with when we ask you a question, don't just guess. It's fine to say, I don't know. Answer that question. We can maybe talk through it a little bit. And if there are important questions about, sensitivity or, the scalability of a particular problem, this should be based in calculations or simulations. There are other, probably, I think, fairly obvious components that you probably will want to include. An important part after the OP section is also a thesis research checkpoint. This should be about 20 minutes. This is often the first time your committee learns in depth what you're actually trying to do as your thesis project. And so we want to know, I have a general idea about what the Julia Laskin and Scott McCluskey labs do, but I don't know what you're specifically doing. And so, help us get up to speed with the key context for your work. Pick a couple of experiments that you think are really the most important and impactful that you've done to show us, and then tell us what you're going to do for the next couple years and what the rest of your PhD looks like. I have a couple do's and don'ts. Focus on the measurement science. Talk to your colleagues. Practice. Please practice. Your group is a great resource for you. Don't wait until the last minute. Don't try and do too much. And definitely don't make up data or ideas. Okay, those are all the things I had. Do people have questions? I know you did. Yes.
I'm proposing an idea, and I know from the case of my community that one or two of them didn't like that. So, and
You don't have to just interpret their faces. They'll probably tell you that they don't buy the idea. Sure.
And
yeah,
I'm working on stuff. It's right to go with me and get this idea for just right. That's okay.
So are you saying, after you've submitted a specific games page in August, and the feedback you get on it is everyone in your committee is like, this isn't going to work?
No.
Or well, so this is one reason why we have this point where you can get some feedback to learn what the friction points are going to be. And so it's fine to contradict prevailing wisdom or prevailing thoughts in an area if you come with, if you prepare with a discussion of the primary literature. I mean, of course, it depends on what feedback you got. Like, if I would always try and measure, ask a friend to help you interpret the feedback you got. If they're really, really strongly opposed to it, then you could maybe make that judgment call. But again, I've been on OPs where students have passed when their ideas will not work. But we had a great conversation about really complex things. And that student demonstrated to the committee that they had deep knowledge, that they knew how to think scholarly and analytically. And that's ultimately what we care about. And we passed them. Okay, yeah, sure, there was some fatal flaw that they didn't quite grasp. But all the other parts supported that. Other questions? Surely. You all came here. There's a panel next, so you can also ask them those questions. Thank you. Best of luck.
stand in our front. Stand up here. Oh, we are gonna make you guys stand, sorry, yeah. Does someone put? Yeah, well, turn off the projector. Better? Cool. All right, so please welcome our graduate student panel. If you guys wanna go down the line, tell us your names, your divisions, what year you are. We can do introductions first, and then we'll start doing questions. So we're gonna start with.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Mitchell. I'm a fourth year. I don't know. In the summer, it's always weird.
We'll go with fourth year.
Student in the BART lab. So I was in the first group that did the new structure with the research checkpoint as well. I'm inorganic.
Hi, my name is Joydeep. You can call me Joy. I was in the Thomason lab. I'm a third year PhD student, completed in September, and I'm from the second division. Everyone.
Also a third year grad student in Yearda. I passed my OPT last year in September. And I also had the updated research presentation thing done. And I'm from the Oregon division.
My name is Magul. I'm a fourth year graduate student from a material division and work with Dr. Bismarck.
I'm Bethany. I'm a third year in the Jewel Alaskan lab. I'm an analyst.
I'm Dana. I'm in PCAM and functional use group. And what else was I supposed to say?
Oh, I'm just gonna start third year.
All right, so we'll go ahead and open up to questions. If anyone has a question they want to ask first to our graduate student panel. Don't be shy.
The research checkpoint. I guess everyone's projects are going to be different. Have you guys had, if you or your colleagues had an issue where we were concerned where you haven't fully pinned down exactly what your thesis is, working on a couple of projects, what do you do then? Do you just kind of present them all? Present highlights? How do you? Do you guys have any advice for that kind of analytical?
Maybe everyone knows their opinion more.
I think it depends on how much, but I think the project that was kind of on this is that I have the most to write about and then present. Because it kind of depends on how much, because this isn't more of like the written portion that you're worried about or the presentation portion.
Just the research checkpoint. Because there's the OP and then right, and then you guys saying there's the research checkpoint itself. It's like I have maybe 2 or 3 projects that I'm kind of making some progress slowly on each. It's like to kind of present half project, which I try to pick the one that I'm furthest on. You know what I mean?
I think it's up to you. I mean, I did just one of them.
Yeah, I would also say like mostly people present that project in which they have made maximum of the progress, and you have some like results, or you have made some progress or some maybe in that project that it's gonna be work or something. And if you want to also show you are like working on other projects too, that what you can do is maybe at the end of your like you did one as a main project presentation, and then maybe a summary of the other side like quest like okay I'm like and just at the end maybe if you want to tell your like, committee that okay the others.
Yeah,
No, you go.
I think that it depends a lot on who your PI is. One of the things that I've seen come up more, at least in my PI's opinion, to give perspective, Suzanne is one of the ones who helped write the new structure. And so the whole thing is your prelim, but only the proposal is the OP, right? And so the research checkpoint, your PI can give you more feedback on than on your proposal. So don't be afraid to ask them maybe what they think you should present. And if they say, oh, I can't help you on that, that's fine. But they might give you expectations of what they want. And that is probably different from person to person still because it's such a new part of the process. I'm going to contradict Ma a little here.
I think it's better to front load your many projects. You see this a lot in seminar talks. Professors will come in and say, my lab does these 3 things, and today I'm going to focus on this story. And so I like that structure. I think either way can work depending on how you want to lay it out. But that's one I see a lot. So you might consider that. Ideally, you will not have enough time to cover every project. Like
Yes.
there's just not enough time to do it. So you will likely have to focus in order to sufficiently cover the background in your research and talk through your data.
Yeah.
I know not everyone's in that situation, but hopefully you are.
Like research, because in material, I am for material. So we have to present our research before the OP. So you have to do like your research talk when you're submitting and you are giving your like OP in the fall. So most of the professors, like all in my committee, there was one professor who was outside of history and he was not in my research talk, but the other ones there. So they know most of the stuff you are gonna do. Like in a one semester, I don't think so I can do a lot of progress than in my seminar slides and my research slides in my prelim are gonna be a lot of change. There was not, so it depends on like a lot on the division you are in. So for material science people, I think so it doesn't matter a lot. Like I just talked during my OP for 15 minutes on my research. Other all was just on my idea. So it depends on division to division a lot.
As someone who did present on multiple projects and is in the analytical division, it's never a bad idea to just have slides for both of them. And if your committee doesn't really want to hear about one of them, as someone who I started talking about the first project, which I had made a lot more progress on, and then halfway through that, I was told, Alyssa, let's move on to the pretty pictures. I quickly moved on to the second project. So they will also tell you in the OP whether they want to hear about what you're currently talking about.
So I guess the key part is like they're evaluating your ability as a scientist to come up with ideas. What are so this new research presentation? What's in your opinion for each one of your divisions? What are they evaluating in your research update that you're giving? Are they going to grill you on your research as like your professors would, or are they just kind of seeing that you've made good progress? You know what I mean? Like, what is from your perspective, what's the purpose of that segment?
Committee dependent.
Yeah,
However,
PI dependent.
for me and the other third year for my group that did this year, my biggest takeaway is spend more time on the research summary than you think you should. Because funnily enough, even though I like prepared a super ton for the OP, like that part, they didn't ask as many questions because really you should have a deeper understanding of your own research. You know, the OP, they give a little bit more grace with that, but I think I struggled more answering questions, whoopsie, on my actual research part because I just prepared for less. So obviously it is committee dependent. If someone on your committee is super familiar with what you're doing, they'll be able to ask more specific questions than say something that, you know, if your project or proposal to be is a little bit more research.
Like personally, I was grilled more on the research than on the OP. So, and rather instead of like my OP took 40 minutes, 1 hour went for my research. So it depends if your committee member maybe likes your research work more than your OP work. So give equal presentation for both of them, like equal strength to both of those.
Yeah, in my OP, it was usually like, since I'm from organic division, it was mostly heavily dependent on the OP research proposal questions. Like basically I have to defend that proposal. Then it went on to like 1 hour and 10 minutes. And then they were like kind of, so you just have 10 minutes to finish your research presentation. So they just asked like some of the mechanistic questions. So they were not that into research part, but so if either they start grilling you for the OP parts, or if you defend them fine, they will just give you like 10-15 minutes, finish your research talk, and then they just so yeah, I think that also depended on the day, whether they want to hear your research first or the OP part first. I personally like to invest more time on the original proposal part because that will be something new that you have to read about from other fields, and you already know your research more, so
So just as an add-on, the main idea, the main reason why they added the are the research assessment thing that you do is, so in chemistry, we don't do community research, right? When you compare to MCMP or in Pulse, and what that does is that you only meet your committee if you meet your committee to ask them to be your committee members. Most people just send emails, hey, let's sit on my committee, and that's the only form of interaction you have with your committee members. So the main reason they introduced this is to prevent the case where the first time you're meeting your committee is on your dissertation defense days, which happens a lot because we don't do yearly committee meetings in chemistry. So I guess like the main thing is try to inform them. They would ask you questions if they're interested. I agree with what everybody has said or have said. But if you could also like flip it back on them and make them help you. Like actually communicate your problem that you're having with your research and be like, this is what I'm doing, because you're informing them. That's all you're doing with the research assessment part. This is what I'm doing. This is the problem I'm having. If there's someone on your committee that can pose questions to them. So that way you're like asking them first before they ask you. That's a strategy that helped. I unfortunately only got like 10 minutes on mine because my PI had to fly somewhere.
So, as a comment on what you have saying that the committee does not like communicate very effectively, like they do not give like structured feedback on the specific page aim, what to do in this situation. They say, that's okay. But they do not say like real feedback, how to tackle this.
Like when you're going to write for what you said that in like July.
First, how to like think of the idea that does this mean that the idea is not really good, or they just don't spend a lot of time like giving me feedback, and how to tackle this in the document and the presentation. So I don't say that they didn't like the idea. I would say that they didn't give much feedback or helpful feedback.
I can understand. Okay, so in my case, I haven't heard anything from my committee back. Okay, like when I submitted my idea, but I would say hearing nothing is also good. It means they don't want to say anything to you, so you can just continue working on your idea. It means there is no like things they are worried about. So most of the cases, I think I have seen like they ask you question sometime, like maybe if it's like very, very nearby to your research field or your research expertise, like you have before, either you have done that research in your undergrad nearby, and it's like, that idea you are gonna do is mixing with that. And they just want to know, in some cases, they want to know, okay, how different this idea is from your previous experience, okay, and the work you are doing now. So the one thing is, my idea was very, very different than the work I have done previously in my life. So I think so that's why they just, or maybe they just don't know they're saying anything. But I think so hearing nothing is also good. It means you give them, so it means your idea is fine. You can just continue working on that and refining on that. And because if they say something and they say like that, and you have to go for another idea, like look at other thing, there's also a lot of stuff to do. So hearing nothing is also like, it's a positive sign. I would say.
It's okay. It's
okay. Like my committee even didn't reply to like right a day before or.
I'd also say, as with a lot of things we've said, it varies from PI to PI. If you know other people who have had these same committee members, see if you can find out if they got the same level of feedback. And if there was a particular way they preferred to communicate, like maybe they want you to meet with them one-on-one. I haven't heard of anyone who wants that, but maybe that's the case for them. And so hearing about the individual quirks of your committee members from people who've had them before can help a lot with knowing how to deal with them or what to expect from those particular faculty members.
So your actual presentation, like at least in our group, we always know that our PI always wants to do the OP first, but there's other PIs that want to do the research first. So asking your group, especially if they've had someone who's also on your committee or even your same committee, just in general, what do they focus on more of like, what did I do first? So that you know what's going on a little bit more. You're not surprised when you walk in and they make you pull up the other presentation.
I would also add, talk to someone who's actually had them on their committee, not someone who heard of someone who had them on their committee. I did that. I had a friend who's like, oh yeah, so-and-so, they don't ask many questions. And then they asked me a ton of questions. And afterwards I talked to someone who actually had them on their committee and they're like, oh yeah, they're known for asking a ton of questions. I'm like, come on.
You expect the reverse also. Like someone said they ask a lot of questions, but they did.
So the day.
That's great.
The ones who ask a lot of questions you want to be more prepared for. So that's kind of the worst case, but they're possible.
The best thing is what I also did is just to talk to the people of their group. You know, no group know more about their PI as compared to other people. They know what type of questions also they like to ask. Some professors like to ask fundamental. Some professors like to ask like the big picture question. So I would say if the question point of view, what I did, and I think so it helped me a lot, was that I prepared my slides and then I just took those slides which I'm gonna like present after my whole presentation talks I took those slides to the 1 or 2 people I know in their groups. And I just asked like, okay, these are my slides. This is what I'm gonna, it was like a very informal presentation. I just told them, okay, this is my slide. I'm gonna talk this about here, this thing. And then they asked me some questions also. And then that helps me also to, to get a perspective of the other person who is in their group and they know how that thing is taken by their PI. So that helps you to also prepare for the question. I think so, like that was a very helpful thing for me. Because every PI like different kind of questions to ask.
All right, I think let's take another question. Anyone has?
Is it a good idea to have your paper topic like kind of related to your previous research experience, for example, like your undergraduate research experience or something else like that? Because like a good thing is you kind of familiar with that topic. And bad thing is can be considered as it's not really like innovative enough. So how to like balance that thing?
It also depends on the committee, that how much picky they are. They are like fine with that or not. Like there is no one else who is gonna judge you on that and gonna conflict on that. There is like one your PI and the other 2 committee members. So I know in 1 or 2 cases, like people who are very close, like they did the same idea, but they have like the committee members ask them like, okay, how you will differentiate this idea from your previous expertise. So then this like a kind of a little, thing can come up, but it depends on the committee. Maybe they just don't care.
Would be clear about your background if you're going to do that. I did that. But I told my committee, hey, I'm pulling this idea from kind of this basis, and it is still sufficiently innovative from the work I previously did. If you're just like, oh yeah, my undergraduate thesis that I wrote to get my honors certificate or whatever, like the next steps are this, I'll just propose that. That won't fly. And if you try to pass that off and they realize during your presentation, that could be a problem. I haven't heard of anyone trying that.
Yeah.
But I would say that it's not in the spirit of the OP, and so you shouldn't do it. If you have an idea that innovates on your past research rather than your current research, I think that's fine, but there should still be sufficient innovation.
But also remember, if it's nearby that your expertise area, they are gonna grill you more.
Yes.
If you're so far from your expertise, they are gonna grill you less. So there is always a balance because they know they have your CV, like each and everything. When you send them your IDP and like all your documents, so they have all of them. So they know what you did and what like all that stuff. So
not unless it's related to your proposal, but it's not going to be part of the research checkpoint for sure. They want to focus on what you're currently doing.
Just organizational, so the chair of the committee is the PI. So
yes.
what if I have a co-PI, would it share the chair or just the main advisor?
Also put this out there, the organization of your committee doesn't fully matter for the OP. So like I'll say this because like I actually have this experience, like your committee for your OP doesn't necessarily have to be like the committee for your defense. So like I wouldn't worry too much about organization of your committee.
I think the specifics should be already on your plan of study. You've all hopefully already picked a committee of at least 3 of the 4 for will be there for your OP. And when you did that, the main office probably chose between your 2 co-PIs as one of them is your chair to list on the paperwork. Yeah. So that is going to be on the paperwork, but it probably doesn't matter once you're in the room.
I think when you fill your plan of study, you should have indicated which one of them is your primary advisor, your co-advice. So that would probably be the chair of the committee.
Yep.
Okay. Other questions? Don't be shy. No one's gonna bite up here.
No one asking about how to come up with an idea.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. How did you guys come up with an idea?
He's asking. Let's go down the line. How did you guys come up with your ideas?
I already said a little bit. I pulled off of an idea from my undergrad research. I just saw a larger gap in that field, and I spent, it's a little late now. I did spend most of my second year with a notebook where if I had an idea, I'd write it down. If I went to a conference and saw something cool, I'd write it down. And this is the one that bubbled to the top. And so I ran with it and dug deeper into it. It was tricky because I had to research more outside of my current project because it was based on something I wasn't currently doing. It was very different from my current work, but I still had to show that level of innovation because it was based on past work. So depends on the idea. I really liked it. And so I did that, but it's not always the best way to go.
Okay, so for me, it was kind of different. My idea was during the COVID times, I used to be interested with just going through what Moderna and Pfizer is making. So that made me look into lipid nanoparticles. And kind of like I asked my PI if I want to work with something with delivery of drug system. Is that good? So he said that you can do anything that's not part of your work that you're doing currently right now. So I became very interested with whatever COVID times, whatever happened. So I gauged further. I took time out to read what's like not there. They work with COVID. So what else can I do with the same thing? How to change lipid nanoparticles, how to have a better design, how to do that. And that led me like stick to something of a disease such as tuberculosis, tropical disease, lipid nanoparticles. And how do I want to answer that gaps? How is it feasible? So that led me to my OP idea. And I would suggest every time you come with an idea, don't go directly to your PI, but try to tell him, like, I have this kind of a thing. Is it okay? If he gives a green signal, don't worry about the rest of the committee members.
Yeah, it was the similar thing for me also. Like I was so excited about one field of related research methodology in my field. And I also wanted to learn from my side what exactly goes in there. So I just reading around it. And then when I had the annual meeting with my PI, I just discussed with him, I'm thinking to have an OP idea, something like this. And then it is like far from the current work that I'm doing. So he said, yeah, if it is like this new research methodology is totally fine because you are not going to involve any of the things that you are already doing, and you will get to learn a completely different field. And then when I go back to like getting an idea, I just like go through 3 or 4 different research groups who has been working with that methodology, either like utilizing a similar thing or like some other research field. So you will surely get 1 or 2 different ideas, and then I just discussed with like senior lab members from my group whether this is like innovative enough. And once that innovative part is done, you can easily find the significant part. So it's up to you, like whether you want to go for more innovation. That will be more painful for the starting part, but once you get to learn all the things, so they won't get into much deeper into that. And then if you go for the significance wise, then it will be like more in terms of proving the point that it is more significant. That's why you are doing this as a all purpose.
For me, actually, so I just picked maybe different sides of my research experiences I was having. So I did catalysis in my master's. So I was like, okay, and I'm not doing catalysis now. So that's a like totally different work I'm doing now. But like, okay, I want to do OP on catalysis, but then okay, what I can do, because I previously worked on MOFs, so I can't do on a MOFs stuff. So I just picked different. So the idea was just the same basis, like, okay, we have a catalyst, you can design, and then you can just do a catalysis. So that's how I just came up with an idea of doing plastic upcycling by using a zeolite based catalyst. So like you can just like maybe mismatch like your expertise, because if I see that it was innovative, like very different than my research areas I have worked on, but all you can say the catalyst design expertise, like all those thoughts you already have because of your previous experiences. So that's how also you can, depending on your previous experiences, so you can just come up with a new field, but you can use your experience. So all the techniques you can use, all that, like I know them. So there was like maybe most of the stuff I have to work majorly was on picking up the plastic, which I want to like which product I want to make and which starting material I want to use, and also like, okay, how I can design my zeolite differently, which people haven't done. So that like innovation I have to be studied more on a catalyst design using the zeolite, and then just which direction I want to do. But I would say the basic ideas maybe I was having a little bit before due to my previous research experiences. So you can use your previous research experience.
So I looked at a couple different like big journals. There's one, at least for analytical chemistry, there's Trends in Analytical Chemistry. It pushes out like reviews on just like things that are popular in analytical chem. But looking at that and then like the JAX Analytical Chem and looking at review articles of like what are kind of the fields in general that people are looking at, and usually at the bottom of them they always have like a future direction, but like, oh, it'd be really great if someone did X. Like, okay, if you can think of a way to do whatever that is, good way. But I also just made like a master doc as I was searching, and anytime I saw something like that maybe might be interesting, I would throw that in there. And then eventually kind of looked deeper at some of them and I was like, no, or be like, maybe. And then the other thing is for analytical, you all had to do your seminar on some like new improvement. You can use that as a starting point, because if it's something that's interesting that you like, that maybe as you're already researching that in the past year, kind of already have a lot of background on that. You don't have to do background twice. So if it's interesting, you can do something related to that and kind of use that, and it's less work overall. But that's, I guess, just for analytical, because that's not your own research example.
See, mine, it was a little bit, I did not take the path of least resistance to writing my idea. I started off reading like a bunch of stochastic papers about stuff that I was randomly interested in. And my advisor kind of had to course correct me, but I guess essentially what ended up happening was there was a theory paper that said, here's this phenomenon, now design an experiment pretty much. Can you experimentally realize theories? What the theory is trying to show? Obviously, when you actually present your OP, you don't want to just say, I want to build this experiment around the theory. So you have to be, at least for me, I had to be a little bit creative with how I said it, because it's not just, theory is saying this and we think we can see it experimentally, but it might not work. You kind of have to like be a little bit. The other thing, I don't know if this would be helpful for some of you, but it was like I started with a material system, I guess, that I thought was interesting. And then, is there some sort of characterization technique that hasn't been done already that you could maybe use? At least I'm speaking from the PChem standpoint. Your characterization technique, could that fill in some of the knowledge gaps that are already existing for a particular material system?
All right, I think we have time for a couple more questions. If that popped up any questions for anyone?
I'll add on. As you heard, there's a lot of different ways to go about coming up with your idea, but I think the unifying theme is make it something that you're interested in. It will be a slow, painful process if you force an idea that you don't really care about, and your committee will see it. So, find something that really does interest you And it will be so much more fun, the whole process.
Yeah. Would be a little.
Because I guess it's just like come up with a new my aim would be to detect it. Like how did you come up with three like maybe specific aims to describe this? So I will say I had three, and I know they say not to make like one dependent on the other or like the I also never presented that because I didn't even get that far into my hobby. But I can kind of just tell you what I did as like an idea. It's gonna depend on whatever your own idea was. But I was trying to like come up with like a point of care device that would use a specific detection mechanism to like quantify metal cation concentration in like blood samples. And so the first part was, can I actually quantify with this way of detecting, because it had never been used to quantify, and that was the first step. And then the second step was, okay, the sample prep, how do I even do that? Because the samples that I have are not good and will not work with what I want to do. And so kind of figuring that out. And then the last one was just make the device. But I could have gotten away without the third part. Like the first part, I think on its own probably could have even been an OP. It's just gonna depend on whatever you have. If it is just about like, can I even detect this? Yeah, I don't know if that would just be like one specific aim. That's kind of more like that's your general idea of like, but if you can break that up to more granular, like what do you have to do to be able to detect that? Like if you're building an instrument, how do you build the instrument? What things are you going to that? And that comes about the more you look into an idea, like you can figure out how to break it down a bit more.
And also add that these are supposed to be structured after like grant proposals, basically. Ask your PI if you can read some of their grants they've submitted, and that'll give you an idea of how these documents are structured, how the aims play against one another, what kinds of scopes they cover, and that'll give you a better idea of how to write a grant, because I doubt many of you have done that. I know I haven't, even though anyone who goes into academia has to become an expert on it. We don't learn about it much. So read examples, and that can help you understand better how to structure that.
Even if they are like dependent, if they are dependent to each other, I think what varies is the way you defend it when they ask you questions. Like, is this going to happen? It depends on the way you defend it. So ultimately, like for me, someone said that just don't make it dependent to each other. Just remove your things. And that happens 1 week before my OP. But I didn't listen to him. I stick to my ideals. And today I'm standing here. So that's the point. Even if they're dependent, there will be many people around to tell you, like, you know, this professor says this is that, nothing, just defend.
Yeah. How you do that day, like how well you are prepared, like whatever the structure you have, just like go with that and like give your best and like.
And one point I would say, like, trust me, it's an imagination. If it's dependent, it's the way you defend it. That's it.
All right, we're gonna get a question.
Okay, this is pretty much the same as hers, but for biochem related, because if you're extracting like a protein or something, all downstream stuff is going to be just that protein, so it relies on its first and working. So how would you separate? I'm going to separate it. How would you
Aim to in vivo. If in vitro cell line doesn't work, which means in vivo doesn't work. So you show it in a way that your technique is the best, and you just know a lot about it. If they ask you questions anywhere, what if the E. coli pellets get stuck? What if it's in the inclusion bodies? I know I can do it. So that's how, be confident and that works. And for biochem, one point, how many biochem people are you? Do you have a committee members who's not from chemistry?
Why?
Good decision. My committee member was one of them from chemistry, and the other one was from biology. So Andrea, since she was my committee member, so she came up, and the first thing she said that, "Are you from Pulse?" I said no. Her reaction changed. She found out that chemistry OP is much easier than Pulse. So her idea of my PA OP change and everything was new. So if you have someone from outside, that's good. But if you have it from chemistry, that's also fine.
Yeah, make
That's also
sure
fine.
your outside committee members know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And maybe have your PI talk to them about what exactly we do here. Because if they come in with a different expectation, it can totally change your experience.
And I think there is a moment like 5 minutes. Just when you get in, you're supposed to get out and they talk. I think within there, it's kind of like decided how they will ask you questions. What's the expectations? So anyone from having a PI from some other department, not just biochem, even for others, chemical engineering or something, their OP is way tougher. So they will be very easy with you. So you can have that expectation.
The one final thing I'll say on if you have like sequential aims that are dependent, have contingency plans, have backup slides for if your committee says, well, what if this doesn't work or it doesn't do this like you think it will? Try and think through everything that can go wrong and what you would do if that thing went wrong.
If you're expressing a person from a specific organism, tell them, well, if it doesn't work on this one, I'll try this related one and sell it. Just sell your stuff in that, like, if one doesn't work, it's not the end of the project. You do something else. Yeah.
Go for it.
If you've already sold them on like, yeah, I'm gonna do this in cell in vivo, tell them, well, if it doesn't work, I'm gonna do recombinant. That's it.
You can write your main paper, or your main points, like everything is going to work, but just along the way have offshoots of like, well, if this doesn't work, I'd do this. But those offshoots can always assume that everything upstream did work, and you don't have to explain how that would then feed back into everything downstream. Just kind of show you did the problem solving, but maybe don't spend all the time to link everything back together. Think of it more like offshoots than a big network.
The same with the organic, like the reaction you are going to propose should work so that you can have the specific aim 2 and 3 work on the derivatization studies or mechanistic aspect. So you have to just like defend that reaction scheme that it is going to work. If this catalyst doesn't work, you have tons of different things that you can basically try, and then have the literature backup plans that these reactions are already well reported with these schemes. So based on these mechanistic rationale, we can basically propose that this is going to work anyway. So down the line, specific aim 2 and 3 just makes it easier if you are able to basically defend the specific aim 1. For me, it was like 30 minutes defending this specific aim 1, and then they said, okay, just finish the rest 20 minutes for the specific aim 2 or 3. So I'll say spend more time of innovation and introduction part. You will get a lot of questions from that. Depends on the committee members, but I think they just start asking questions from the very first slide. So it's good to practice with your friends, like you have 30 or 40 minutes of worth of slides you can talk through, and then they can interrupt you in between to ask any random questions. So it's always better to practice with your friends so that they can ask you random things about your reaction scheme or any other methodology that you have put in there. And then you just note down things and you have to read again about those, because you don't want to stuck at your OP when they're asking something, because that will be negative.
Then one other thing, whatever the possible questions you think they can ask, make a backup slide. Even though you can remember, oh, this is a very small thing, I will be keep this, I know. But at that time you are in such a pressure, there's some normal things which in daily life, and you have done like that a lot of time, and that's a very common thing. Who knows, like you just like forget because you are in a very such pressure at that moment. So just whatever the possible question you can come up with, or the people ask you while you're practicing or talking to your friends or getting a feedback, just make a backup slide. That will help you.
Be ready for simple questions.
Fundamental.
They will ask, like, if you have UV Viz, they can ask you to write out Beer's Law. Like, it's a Gen Chem concept, but it will trip people up in the moment. Just don't forget that they can ask Gen Chem concepts, and it's okay. And if you don't know the answer right then because you freeze, that's also okay. It's not the end of the world.
What about the experiments that I didn't do at my life? Like if I didn't do mass spec and I need the mass spec to do like something in the project.
You have to do.
Yes.
Half of the experiments you never did anyway. You will project it in a way that you can do it anytime.
I'm an inorganic chemist who proposed cell work. My committee didn't know either. So they didn't know what questions to ask, and in fact, they asked me to skip over it.
Yeah, and I showed mass spec. Not them.
At the end of the day, what matters to them is the
State department, some professors do mass spec and I didn't do so.
But I would say you like they ask you or not. If there is something on your presentation on your slide, you should be able to explain that. Like you should be able, like, okay, you don't know how mass spec works. What you can do is just go to Wikipedia, you can just type like the workflow of that. You can just put as a backup slide and you can walk through them, I think. So like that will be the minimum you can do.
Okay, we'll take one last question.
This is a very, just how many slides roughly you guys have? So you get all our.
slide a minute.
20.
Yeah.
You counting backup slides?
Yeah. Slides don't. Yeah. As many backup slides as actual slides.
Maybe 60.
Most of the professors. 3?
Yeah, I would make it totally like presenting slides maybe 20 to 25 or like maximum 30. Because it's 40 minutes, you just like aim for the 40-45 minutes, but back up as much as you can.
Just for the OP and not for the.
Oh, that one depends on how much data you have.
Slide a minute for both. General rule all around. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming out.
That's been kind of long. You guys have any other questions? I'm sure people on the panel will be more than willing to answer things. You can ask any. Yeah.
Alright, it's Tim. Recording.